Hello. 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 Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Cool.
And this is exciting because we've talked about this segment now for a while, and here we are on
Doing it.
the new thing, change my mind. And that's what this is all about. Ryan, you changing my mind in a fun way. We're here to have a good time.
In a
Uh,
good
I
way.
I think we want to. I think we should start by putting out there the idea of change my mind as a segment was really to look at games and disparities that we have and trying to find one that maybe we give one more try and see what thoughts come up and maybe learn more about that experience, that first experience, and what maybe made us feel that way, and replay a game that maybe wasn't our favorite at the time.
It's very
So
general. I just wanted this so you could play Caverna.
I
That's
know,
it. That's the
but
only.
that's the beginning. It turned into a thing.
It did.
It turned into a thing.
It did.
So I'm excited. And Caverna, I'm excited, which is weird to say because when you think about anytime I've talked about Caverna, I've never used the word excited, but I'm excited for this segment completely.
Here we
Uh,
go. That's thing number one.
Thing number one.
Yeah. So change my mind. So, for those of you that don't know, I really love Caverna. And Chris, you really did not love Caverna. The opposite of love
I
Caverna.
really had I really had, but I really, as I've talked about, had just a really bad experience of Caverna, and I did not like it. My rating, which we'll get into on Board Game Geek, was not strong
Well,
at
this
all.
is right. So this game, right? We're talking about this game, Caverna the Cave Farmers. It is a game by Uwe Rosenberg. Uwe Rosenberg, of course, being the master at farming board games. And Caverna was essentially the sequel to Agricola. That's really what this started at. Which you never played Agricola.
I have not. No.
Right.
Agricola is one that people I get told a lot that I should have played or I should play. I have not. Still have not got it to the table.
That's okay. A lot of people, uh, well, I'll get into more Agricola talk later. But Agricola is a farming board game, and it's also well known as one of the real big players in worker placement. It became number one on Board Game Geek for a little bit of time. I think it dethroned Puerto Rico from Board Game Geek, and then that ended up getting dethroned. Um, but yeah, and today we are going to be talking about Caverna and will I change your mind on Caverna? So we played Caverna already together.
Yes.
And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our opinions about Caverna beforehand, the game we played, and then our opinions after. Because maybe I hate it now.
Yeah,
So,
it's possible.
nah,
You
it's
could.
unlikely. It's unlikely. um, but here we go. I'm gonna bring up my points. So hey, I got a little PowerPoint of this because I really like Caverna so much that I'll make a PowerPoint for Caverna. So so why I liked Caverna, okay? So Caverna has furnished tiles. There are these little different tiles that you put in your board. So the game is played where half of your board, your player board, is the farm, and the other half is the cave. And the cave is comprised of different rooms. And within those rooms, you get to put down the furnished tiles that will basically give you special bonuses, either in game or end of game scoring, or both. Um, and it'll also allow you to have more workers throughout the game because the thing about Agricola and Caverna is that if you want to have workers, you need space for them. Um, Not only that, but your workers can go on what's called expeditions in this game. So in Caverna, you could do all the farming stuff, but you could also do some cave mining, and you can go on these expeditions where basically you just get a benefit, and you just get to increase your hat size. Basically, well, literally, it turns like your hat of a 5 to a 6. Um, it's a bigger board. There's bigger farm area, bigger cave than Caverna, and then Agricola. I mean, there's more action options than Agricola because a lot of people have complained about the limited number of spaces for action selection in Agricola. There's tons and tons of pieces, tons and tons and tons of pieces because this game supports up to 7 players. Um, I've only seen a 7-player game of Caverna once, and everyone who played it said they would never do it at 7 again. So don't play it at 7 players for sure.
It sounds awful,
Yeah.
personally.
But the thing is, too, it is nicer to newer players of Agricola, okay? Because Agricola can be a very punishing game. Um, and Caverna is a lot more flexible, okay? There's a lot more options, and there's a lot more of giving of resources. That space, like I said, there's a lot of more spaces, and you really can just do what you think, what you want. I got Caverna way back when it first came out because I was in love with Agricola, and I'm like, oh man, an Agricola sequel that's better than the original because everyone was hyping it up at the time. I got to get it, so I got it very first year it came out. I played it a bunch, played it solo, I played it with my wife, I've played it with friends, and yeah, and it's one that I adore just playing with the pieces. If you like playing with pieces, this is a great game for that. My rating before our game was 8.9, which is pretty high for me.
That's high for a
Pretty,
lot of people, I'd argue too, because
it's
anytime you start getting word at 9 on Board
yeah,
Game Geek or in your rating scale, 9 for anyone is going to be
yeah,
really high. So
yeah. I mean, unless you're one of those people that rate everything either a 10 or a 1, like that's it. You're just I like it a lot, or nope, awful. Um, 8.9. Really love this game. But I know you didn't like this game.
I didn't, and my score some are going to think is extreme. It was low. It was a 3.
Yeah.
I had a bad first experience with this game. I tried it again with my own copy because I bought it fairly blindly because at one point I bought like a collection of games that I felt like should be owned. Of
Was this
many of those,
early in your hobby?
I wasn't even early in the hobby per se. I just wanted to have a collection.
Okay.
Um, and I was trying to start one that I thought people would be interested in. Because I wanted to get games to the table. And it was a bad strategy. It was really a bad strategy. I regret that one. But that's really one reason it was in my collection, but it also did. I want to just speak to the fact that it did come with a lot of pieces. So the other reason behind it was my thought was, well, even if this game I don't like it, it's got a lot of great bits, and I was into the idea of maybe playing around with the bits from a design perspective. They'd be good from a if I wanted to fool around with designing, or I had a lot of different aspirations, not
Yeah.
as focused at the time. So the bits were a piece of it. So first and foremost, why I disliked it, I do like theme. I'm fine with abstract, but uh, and I like abstract Azul Splendor. I'm actually big on those now. But at the time that I think that I first played this, I was all about theme. And so we're going back in time here before I had really been, I think, discovered what Azul is and
Mhm.
some other games that I will play repeatedly. When you hear me talk about Targi on this channel, and yes, there's a theme in Targi, but not really, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So the theme was uninteresting to me at the time, and I remember that because I was going back for my notes in my head on this. It was an options overload for me, and I remember that there was just too much going on. And I like options, but there was a certain point where I just could not take this much. I did not. I had the AP going on,
Before you continue about options, though, what is uninteresting about a theme of dwarves that live in a cave and they want to extend and farm and go on expeditions? This sounds exciting to me, man.
It was
Come on.
no the idea of the theme. So let me put it this way: theme in that concept is great. But then when I
Sure.
had to deal with the farming part, I was like, oh, freaking no, I don't have enough for this. I gotta feed the freaking people.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta and then it was like, oh, they don't have enough beds.
Mhm.
Fine, I'll do this. And so it felt the theme and execution of the theme for me at a certain point, I just like, oh, I don't know. It's something that didn't get me. And then I said to myself, what the hell is a cave farmer? I'm pretty sure that's what I said. What is a cave farmer? Um, so yeah, I'll take the criticism on that. That's fine.
That's okay.
That's all right. I've been taking criticism on not liking this game for years, so it's nothing new. The game went at a turtle's pace when I played it. And I think the first time I
Mhm.
did was like 3 people. And so there was enough. I don't know what it was. I think it was because of that options overload from others at the table, the time in between. So it was slow.
Mhm.
And I don't mind a long game. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like Caverna because it was a long game. No, I don't like when it moves at a snail's pace. And that's the experience I was having. So I was under this impression, even when I played it again, and I was trying to teach it myself or going through and say, let me give this one more shot and play this with someone. Then I made potentially a mistake. I'll say that. And that was with two people. I don't know. It just, again, it still moves slow for me even then because of the options overload. So I go back to that. It
Did
didn't, there was I felt like I
well,
struggled with balance of it early on
uh,
too, and that I just felt like there was times like, oh, that card's that action's just so good. Whoever gets that has a big advantage this turn, and that depending when it came out could be a huge deal. So, for me that was another thing. It didn't feel well balanced the time I remember initially playing it. Now, it's important to put some context to this though, Ryan,
yeah.
that I didn't play this for a very long time. So my return to this game, you could argue when we played it the next time, I was arguably a different gamer. I had played a lot more games. I went from having played minimal in a lot of ways in terms of modern games
Yeah.
to 150, 200, 250 modern games. So perception wise, a lot had changed. I had played a lot more games. Mechanics, I understood at a much greater level. And I probably played more games that had a point salad or an options perspective where I did have a lot of things I could do on a board. I'm not
So
saying I still to this day don't love when there's like 15 different things I can do necessarily,
yeah, I was gonna
but
ask.
but I probably, again, was unprepared for it when
Yeah.
I went into this. And again, that was a rating of 3.0 at the time. So, as for not wanting to play it again, I really just had lost all interest. It left a bad taste in my mouth.
I know.
And
Yeah, I remember that.
so that was
Did
my experience.
I do have to ask though. So you did mention about the options overload, and for sure, um, you know, Uwe is very much known later on in his design pedigree with Fields Varley, A Feast for Odin,
Yep.
that games that have tons of options and tons of flexibility for things to do. Um, and you know, and Caverna was kind of a step towards that. Was like maybe one of his earliest steps towards that because maybe Le Havre was an earlier step towards that because I can remember before. Um, and yeah, and going back to the turtle pace thing too. And were these all people that played the game for the first time as well too? Like,
One person knew the game, but there was definitely a decent amount of new players. I
yeah,
think I'd say it was I and that was something I don't think I thought about until we were even thinking about this. Like I was
mm,
trying to go back to perspective, and that's why perspective is interesting.
yeah,
You know, um, I think even when I've talked about it, I talked about this game as an understanding why people like it.
yeah,
I might have not have in that moment liked it, but why people like it. I saw an interesting article today all about Settlers of Catan, or just say Catan, I guess now, and it was a really interesting take on saying like, well, no, this is no longer, this is not even a good game anymore. I didn't actually agree with the article in the way it was written. I
yeah,
agreed with the title of the article, but not the article. So, but it's interesting because these were a lot of the games I was playing were some of those. I
yeah,
was kind of recatching up in a few ways
right,
with those games, wherein at that time I would tell you I probably rated Ticket to Ride the base game higher when I played this game for the first time.
that's
Whereas
fair.
I would rate that lower now and Europe way above it. So, perspectives potentially change. That is, I'm not saying they have. I'm not going to give everything away here, but I will say yes, came in different, came into our playthrough with a lot more knowledge and a lot more games under my belt. And that I think made the playthrough interesting.
Well, let's get to that playthrough then, because we did have that game together.
Yes, we did.
It was a fateful February morning. He came by, we had some coffee, and we played Caverna, the Cave
Yes.
Farmers together.
I
It's been
also
a
brought some
long
really
time.
delicious bagels for everybody to know.
I remember those
Delicious,
were good. They were pretty
delicious
good.
bagels.
Yeah. Now, so we had the setting. The ambiance was in there, right? I was like, let's make sure this is a memorable day. The game was already set up. I used my Meeple Realty insert. They don't give us any money. Okay. Um, you know. But anyways, going back to we had a beautiful breakfast and Caverna time, and I want to talk about um our game together. So my goal in this was making sure that one, I knew how to teach it, and I had to make sure I reread some rules just to make sure and refresh myself. And it was a breeze to catch back up, just because I play a lot of Agricola, and Caverna is just Agricola with extra steps, essentially, right? Um, so it was very easy to just get back in the groove of that sort of thing. But then I had to make sure, and this is when I do any game with people. If it's a game, especially that I'm passionate about, I want to stress, as much as I may love the game, I want to make sure that you, the player, are also enjoying it. Because if you're not enjoying it, then I'm not. I'm also not going to enjoy it, and that's okay. It's okay to not like this. I'm not Uwe Rosenberg. I'm not going to be upset that you don't like this game. You know.
I'm sure
Um,
I'm and plenty. It's interesting because what you're talking about is also the kind of thing that I think we talked about all the time on here, which is this idea that we don't have to like the same games. We don't have to have the
yeah.
same taste. This whole segment doesn't exist without that. But that was critical because, again, coming in, game setup, not having to deal with setup, which I remember having to do myself one time and be like, this takes forever.
Yeah.
I didn't
It
mention that
does.
before. It does take forever to set this game up, right?
Yeah.
So you want to enjoy it for that reason alone.
Yeah.
But it is, the instructions part was really critical because one thing, but I want to note immediately for everyone to be aware of is, and this is, I think, a lesson just to take forward that I wouldn't have taken 7, 8 years ago when I probably first played it. Whatever it was, because it came out in like 2013. Is that when Caverna came out?
Sounds about right.
It's
Maybe
around
20, maybe 20,
2013.
maybe
I'm throwing a number at the wall.
2014. I think 2014, around there.
Yeah, it was not.
2013. You're right. Congrats.
Well, that's a lucky guess.
It was a good
My
guess.
point is, I not played it. It was only a few years later, but I had played it. And I will say that there's a good chance I felt like maybe I had missed rules when we were thinking about this. And that was kind of proven to me
Yeah.
when we played because I was noticing early on as you covered some basics. Wait a minute, I'm not sure if I did this right. Now, couldn't remember exactly because this was a while back, but
Sure.
some things were not clicking as wait a minute, this feels different.
Yeah.
Um, just in terms of a rule set. So in that opportunity now also was playing 2-player. And I'd also previously, I think, like I said, played it 3-player. So I was going into a different experience, but most of the core game at that point, I was realizing mostly the same. There's just certain things that didn't come out to the table.
Yeah. No, and with this game in particular, I mean, did you feel as maybe you didn't feel as overwhelmed then, I'm guessing. And do you think that's, just because of your new approach to this game, or I mean,
I think I've played such longer games. I mean, I've set up
yeah,
and played Dinosaur Island,
yeah,
and you want
right.
which is a bigger table hog, and I still am not sure I can teach that game properly.
Yeah.
I don't own it anymore, actually, just because it was hard to get to the table. And so I think there was a comfort level, certainly, and I think that's part of the difference
Yeah.
in maybe feeling a little more comfortable. Also, again, missed one or two rules that made a difference in the game. I believe one was fairly major. I don't know if I did the whole replenishment, for example.
Ooh.
One of the things on some of the cards, I don't know if it was happening every turn or every other. Like I don't.
That's a
I
huge
didn't.
one.
Let me put it this way: I don't remember that many resources being available on cards.
There were
So
tons.
yeah. So I don't remember, and I might be wrong because again, when you remember that far back, our memory's not as strong. It's
Sure.
just a reality. But I didn't remember that many resources being available. So I remember feeling like the first time I played this game, I could not get all these things done. I was
Yeah.
having a hard time getting nearly enough done to even compete in the game. Wherein as we played for this game, I was getting more done. I was getting I had certainly moments where I was irritated or something by like the fact that darn it, you took this spot that I wanted, but it wasn't, it was in the standard way of like, come on.
Yeah.
I wanted that spot, not irritated like angry, more like that. Just that experience of someone grabbed the spot you wanted, which is a normal board game feeling that happens in a game like this.
Yeah, sure. But the thing with Caverna specifically is that when I take a spot of that you wanted or a spot that I wanted, there's another spot that gives you the same thing. Maybe not the same quantity, but I can get wood elsewhere.
Yeah,
I can lay down this thing elsewhere. Whereas, other games may not be as generous like that. And I'll get into more detail about that later. But yeah, and going back to Caverna, it is a lot on the table, but it gives you that same good feeling at the end when you have your completed farm and your completed cave, and it's like, yeah, this is my donkeys.
I
These are my sheep.
I I did find in this one when we did our playthrough, I ended up with more than enough animals on
Yeah,
my farm to be able to kill for food.
yeah,
As it said, I was doing okay in that department. So part of I chalk up with the experience of this one's all right. It is manageable to get those animals out, not the experience I had the first few times I ever played this game. So this is one of those moments where you start to question: did I play this right the first time? Maybe that's it. Maybe that wasn't right. Maybe something was off. Maybe the teach wasn't good, or was I just did I just have a really bad game? Um, it's still again a game that I did still feel I had to say as we were playing it, all right, this game is going to take some time. Again,
yeah,
that's okay. Time is okay. Um, because I want to, we had Jeremy Howard on the other night, and what Jeremy and as we were talking, I believe I was talking about something how something was a simple game, but that's okay, and that was kind of the conversation. Like simple is okay, long game is okay. It's all a matter does the game continue to interest me.
right.
I think this game held my attention as we were playing much better than the first and second time I've probably played this game. Um, and that was probably why by the end I was maybe more focused on and be able to get some of that stuff done. It still was definitely not a short game. I don't know
It
our
wasn't.
exact length of our game.
It probably was like closer to 2 hours. It's
It was
closer to two
probably around
hours.
two,
Yeah,
and that was a two-player game, right? So
yeah,
with that being a 2 hour game, and I think I felt pretty comfortable by fairly quick into the game.
yeah.
Um, if at a 3-person or a 4-person game, how much longer does it go? Is the question that I don't remember. I don't have the answer to because I don't remember. But at 4 people or 3 people, now suddenly what is that? Another 30, 45 minutes. Does at that point become too long for me? That's the question I have in my head as I was thinking about was my mind changed, honestly, because we played with 2, it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's add more people. What does that do to the gameplay?
Right. And the thing is too, with Caverna specifically, if you really know what you're getting into and you're like a pro player, and keep in mind, both you and I, oh yeah, and 2 hours does not include the setup. That's just the
No,
gameplay, and closer to 2 hours. We're guesstimating
we're
because
guesstimating.
we
Yes.
didn't really keep that in mind. But when you know Caverna, and this also when you know Agricola too, it really is 30 minutes per player. When you know it, flat down, it's 30 minutes per player. Granted, because it's been so long since I played Caverna, there were times where I did look into the rulebook just to make sure. Wait a minute, can I do this? Because I know in Agricola you do this,
Yeah.
and just, yeah. So there was definitely that clarification. Um, but you know, in the end, it actually came down, by the way, to a pretty close game. I looked this
Good.
up beforehand. It was 57-54.
It was very close.
Very, very close.
You edged me. I forget. There was 1 or 2 moves at the end that really gave you the edge there, but I was well fed the entire game.
Yeah.
Like my farm was well fed, but your cave was much better than mine. Uh, that's
Right.
no question. Your cave was better, and more points are coming out of your cave because my cave was pretty weak sauce. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but you say that, but again, it did come down to a pretty close game overall.
Yeah.
You know, so that was our game of it, and we've been murking on this together. Both you and I have been playing with the ratings on this. And before you give yours and your big unveil, it's now time for me to talk about my rating change
Right.
because my rating did change of Caverna. And my rating, and this isn't a big deal to a lot of people, but mine went down. Mine went down zero point 0.6 points, which I know, oh my God, that's crazy. Why are you making a big deal about it? Okay, here is the thing. Throughout our entire game of Caverna, I did have a good time, and I still think Caverna is a great game. I really missed Agricola, and I need to bring up right now Agricola versus Caverna. I have to. I have
I
to.
knew
Have
that
to.
I knew this was coming, by the
I
way,
have
because
to.
we've heard about a great with the if everyone did a drink for every time you said Agricola in this video, they would be on the floor.
Hmm.
So we knew something was coming.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
excited to hear what you put together here.
Agricola for a very long time was my favorite game of all time. And when I played Caverna, it was my Agricola was my favorite game of all time. So I was very much looking forward to Caverna. And don't get me wrong, Caverna was great when I first played it, and I still enjoy Caverna. And as years went by, I had less of a desire to go back to Caverna because the things that I wanted in Agricola, Caverna didn't have. And these are things that people complained about that I adored about Agricola, right? And um, this is my case, Your Honor, for pleading why I think Agricola is a better me game than Caverna, because that's the facts. Um, Agricola has less options, has completely less options, and there is a lot more player interaction in that regard. Into I need to be start player, I need to get this spot. There was not a lot of that in Caverna. I think you were start player majority of the game.
I took start player at some point,
Yeah, and like
and
early on.
yeah, and you never even tried to take like it didn't become a priority for you to take start player back at all.
Yeah,
Because I was expecting, I'm not gonna lie, when you have a start player functionality in a game, and when we were playing with Caverna, I took that quick as like, I'm gonna need this, I bet.
yeah.
And then you never even went for it. I was like,
No,
did I do something? I actually was asking myself in that moment, did I do something wrong in our game of Caverna? Because you weren't even trying to take it away from me.
yeah, and that's the thing. There's not enough tension there, in my opinion, to go first in Caverna than there is in Agricola. Because again, there's way less spaces in Agricola, and there's only so many things you can do. There's only one space to gather wood in Agricola in a two-player game. I mean, increases with more. Um, and it's very dire. It's very dire. It's a lot more punishing too with feeding your people in Agricola than it is Caverna. In Agricola, you are gonna if you don't have an engine going, you are gonna be sweating to make sure your people are fed. You're gonna be sweating to make sure they eat. Caverna, no problem. You got an animal, just eat it. No problem, right? And Caverna, I mean Agricola, you got an animal, okay. Do you also have the cooking hearth or an oven to cook it? If you don't, well, then you can't eat it. And it just runs away. It's not like you could just eat it right after and turn it into food. So and and these are things that you need to anticipate for. The first time I played Agricola, I wasn't really impressed, to be honest. And I remember distinctly dying to play this game. It was like, oh my God, this knocked out Puerto Rico. I need to try this game. I went to a local game shop. Guys, do you have Agricola? I need this game. What's Agricola? I'm like, oh man, that store no longer exists. I in all places that year, I was like, where am I gonna get this game? Of all places, near Comic Con, they had a copy. 70
Wait, New
bucks.
York Comic
New
Con?
York Comic Con.
They never have anything games.
New York Comic Con.
I mean, there's a few. I got Scott Pilgrim, the card game that completely underrated. It's
Yeah.
finicky, but it's underrated. But I got that there.
And
That's all I
and
can remember.
so here I am dying. Oh my gosh. I found Agricola. I'm sitting in a in like a Bruce Campbell panel, just opening up my copy of Agricola while Bruce Campbell's talking. I'm just like, oh God, this is it. This is it. This is it. You know, they didn't even have animeeples at that time. They were just cubes for the animals. Um, and I was so stoked. But the biggest thing I love about Agricola is that image on the right that I borrowed from Board Game Geek. Right there, cards, 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 cards. In the beginning, in Agricola, what happens is you're dealt in a full game of Agricola, you're dealt uh, occupation cards and minor improvement cards. And if you're playing an advanced game, you do a draft for them. But you have to keep 7 occupations and 7 minor improvements. And those break the rules of the game. And part of the thing that I love about Agricola is getting these cards, looking at the board and deciding, okay, what route am I going to go? What am I actually going to do? And I love that tension because there's that puzzle along with the tension of I need to feed my people or else I'm losing 3 points per food missing. And I love that tension. If you like games like that with like that kind of crunchy tension and deciding combos, like making sure how am I going to make my hand work? I mean, I'm thinking about like even people that like terraforming Mars. It's the same thing, right? You get this hand, how are you going to make it work? This is very much like that. And the thing with Agricola is you get that hand in the beginning, it doesn't change the entire game. You just get that hand and you need to decide how you're going to do it. And yeah, and the thing is, people get scared. I've heard people get scared about stories like I'm not going to touch Agricola because it sounds too punishing. People say the same about Food Chain Magnate. Again, if you
I
play with the
want to
right
do Food
people,
Chain Magnet. That's on the
yeah.
list.
But if you play with the right people, they will teach you how to play this correctly. I'm not saying I'm gonna quarterback and say, "Hey, listen, you should really be doing this." Okay, because that's not my goal. My goal is to make sure you find what I like about this interesting, and then you see if that's what you like in it. If you don't like that kind of thing, Agricola is probably not for you, and that's okay. In my one gaming group, I am the only person that likes Agricola, and I have one friend in my gaming group that I pointed out. He rated Agricola a 2, and he said, I can't believe I rated it a 2. It should be much lower than that.
Well, as Katya pointed out, she hasn't played it. I haven't played it. I think a lot of people haven't played it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, they hear. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying it's interesting though because you're talking about Agricola. You dropped your Caverna score a little bit.
A little bit.
Obviously, a little bit, the 0.6.
0.6.
But still a very respectable 8.3. What is Agricola rated for you? That's what I want to know. Do you happen to know that?
I will tell you right now. But by the way, that lower rating brings Caverna out of my top 100. Agricola is a 9.96.
So that's impressive. I have brought a game out of your top 100, and you potentially have brought my score up for Caverna.
That's true.
We will see what I think people could tell that I didn't hate my experience with Caverna this time around, but I'm still not giving my score, so they don't.
I don't think. By the way, by what you're describing, I don't think you're going to prefer Agricola over Caverna, but I still think you should give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
You know my rule. I'll give any game a shot once.
It's on BGA. I could play on BGA with anyone, no problem. So go ahead and tell me your thoughts, sir.
So my score was really low in Caverna. Like I said, as people heard, my experiences were awful with the first game. It felt too long, and not because the game is, again, as games can be long, but just slogged. So that 3.0 was pretty insulting. There's a few games lower on it. One of them is behind me, which I got for free, which is Lost the Game. Do not play Lost the Game.
Lost the TV show, the game.
Yes, but I love the show.
Yeah,
the game is no.
Look, Battlestar's the exception, man.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But my rating actually went up quite a bit. Now, for me, this is more of the just around average area.
Okay.
And as I looked at my numbers, but this went up, and it went up to a 7.0, a whole 4 points. I really reevaluated it.
It's 4 points.
And I felt it held up. I like it better than certainly plenty of games. And I would say this, I'd probably play it over, if you said this, Catan, or like pandemic and you had to do that, I might actually lean towards Caverna over Catan at this
Sure.
point, so that it has definitely gone up. 7.0 is a big jump. It still puts it. I have a lot of in the 7.5 to 8.5 range of my stuff. So it's still lower, but it's I think a more respectable number. I think it reflects a little bit better on the game, having now played a third time. And when I looked at it, it's still, I mean, lower compared to Board Game Geek. People still probably knock me for only giving it a 7, but it's definitely gone up and it puts us a lot closer. There's a 1 point free difference between us now because yours went
That's
down
good.
and mine went up.
That's like a whole lost the board game in between us, right?
I mean, there is a loss. I think I gave lost a board game a 1, which was generous.
There it is.
A very generous 1.
Well,
I'll make it a 1
point
free just to make it exact if we need. But yeah, no, I had a much better experience. I think I need to play this with 3. And I need to evaluate it at 3 again to give us a more up-to-date number, because I could play this as 3 and drop it right back down to a 6.5 or a 6, because I do need to see what the timing, it's how it is at 3, maybe 4. So I want to try that. And it's a weird thing to say. I do want to try it again. I don't want to do it again at 2. I think I'm slightly generous with this bounce because I think it will play better at 3. I don't think I'd want to just jump into a 2-player game of it again. And no offense to you, because I think you taught it well. I just don't think, having played it, it's optimal at 2, in my opinion. I think it needs, if it's going to be a good game, it's got to play well at 3 for me with this type of game. So
yeah, there's more options for sure, and there's more chances of blocking. I do need to bring up that I haven't tried, and neither of you, obviously, the Forgotten Folk expansion.
No.
And that adds asymmetric powers to the game. And Ryan's right. There's a 2-player version. There's a Caverna cave versus cave. I haven't tried it yet, just because of my distaste for Agricola All Creatures Big and Small, which is like the 2-player box version of Agricola, and that game is awful. Don't try that one. But Caverna, the Forgotten Folk, was actually a fan-made expansion, and Uwe caught wind of it and decided to work with the guy who made the fan-made expansion and make it into an actual published thing. Not only that, this year they're coming out with the second expansion for Caverna. That's Frantic Fiends, which I believe does some of it adds orcs now to the game. I don't know, go crazy.
I'm not rushing out, but
I'm not rushing out.
Someone wants to get it, I'll give it a try.
I'll play it. No, and that's the thing. Like, I'll play it for sure. I don't think Caverna is a bad game. Clearly,
no.
Okay, it's not going to leave my collection for some time. Eventually, sure.
I'll tell you, I've had it, disliked it. It still didn't leave my collection because the bits. I used to use the wood for Everdell. I would take bits out as replaced, but that's before Everdell replaced the crappy wood that they had given us because the twigs rolled off the freaking board.
Yeah.
But I would keep it because I think I should note this, I paid like 50% off for this. So I didn't spend a ton when I got the game. I spent half the price on it.
Yeah, I think I spent full price.
Yeah, so the bits, and the bits are great. And it's one of those things that this is very easily a potential for me library game that I donate to the library because I think it offers value.
That's a fair point.
And I believe, again, because I think I've always said it, I respected the game. I just didn't like it. My opinion has changed. I am not sticking with the 7.0 in the long run until it's the tentative score. I need to play one more time to give it a better take, because I think at 2-player, I think better understanding the rules, I'm estimating a little bit here, as I said. So I'm interested to see what happens. And and as for a 2-player version, I just, in the long run, I don't know, but I need to rush out and play. There's still so many better games to me than Caverna that I'm not going to rush out to play a 2-player.
Oh, me too.
I'm not in the rush for that. If I want to play a 2-player game right now, it's that time you killed me. Everyone knows if I want to play a 2-player game, that's a game I want to play, or 7 Wonders Duel, or And if I want a game that I have little interaction with other people, I'll bust out Hadrian's Wall or something. So, I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's better games that have a lot of decisions to make right now than Caverna. But Caverna, credit where it's due, score has definitely gone up, and it's been fun to do this. And I gotta say, I look forward to doing it because we're gonna do one with Raiders of the North Sea.
Yeah.
And you didn't like Raiders of the North Sea.
I did not like
I'm
Raiders of
going
the
to
North
show you
Sea.
Raiders of the North Sea.
Sorry, I do not like Raiders of the North Sea.
I know.
My mind has not been changed yet.
Your mind is not to change. You do not like Raiders of the North Sea, but what I'm hoping is when we add the expansions in, you have an improved experience and your score goes up a little bit as well. Because I do think as a base game, it's fine. I like it with the expansions. We did have, I will say, for those who watched our On the Table, Jeremy was talking about Scythia, and I will say this because theme with a game like that does matter. Certain games it does matter, certain games it doesn't. I don't know. I can't get behind the theme of it. I'll try it, but the Vikings theme works great. Raiders was a game that for me, I won't give it all away. I'll just say it replaced Champions of Midgard, even though they're very different games. It was the Viking game. It took my Viking game spot. And I like having a good Viking game. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I like sending people to Valhalla. I that's what it is. I like the Valhalla, mechanic. But
I've only played 3 Viking games. I looked it up. I thought I played a lot. I've only played 3.
yeah,
Yeah, I played this. I played Blood Rage, and I played Feast for Odin.
I tried Blood Rage. I was not impressed, but that was
Oh.
just me.
You and me we're in the minority on that. The
I know we
audience
are,
will change.
but that's fine. That's fine.
But
We can't like everything. It's not possible.
But the good news is, and the reason why I like this segment is because it kind of I don't want to be that kind of gamer that plays one game one time and then moves on to the next one. I'm not about that.
No.
I'm not about that. And I think some games do warrant a second play. Just because maybe you just didn't maybe the strategy like Pipeline's a great example. Pipeline, the rule set was over my head completely, and it was just like but how do I grok this? How do I grok it with this strategy? And then I played it a second time and I loved it. Galaxy Trucker, same thing. It's just like, and now that's like a perfect. I love Galaxy Trucker, but the first time I played it, I absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. And sometimes, all it takes is just a better mindset. Maybe some bagels. You know, and maybe different player counts, different maybe expansions.
Yeah.
Or maybe just whatever day it is.
And I will say this, I look forward to if people want to see any compared. I know when it comes down to it, we're going to take a look at our list. Next one will be Raiders of North Sea. We'll continue to look at what else difference exists, but this is very much for me all about that. It's just what you said. What kind of experience do we have in the first time? This isn't like a painful experience. Like this was a really good time, and board games are fun. So I think in the long run, Ryan, for me, that's what this really is. Board games are fun, and that experience does matter. And I will say there's only one game you cannot get me back on here for, and I'm just going to be candid about it. It's that Cleopatra game. You can't get me for that Cleopatra game again. No, I will not play that Cleopatra game.
Cleopatra and the Society of Architects.
You can't pay me to play that game again.
I don't know.
No. Any game where I go like 7 turns in a row and can take no actions because the cards went that way is not going to go up in ranking. I can tell you that much. I think I gave it a 1 on Board Game Geek, actually. I think I like slaughtered it, which I felt bad about. I think I upped to like a 1.5.
It's okay.
So,
it's okay.
But that was Change Your Mind. We talked about Caverna. My score went up. I want to throw those scores up one more time so people can see our.
Oh yeah. It's right here.
So my score went up again. Mine was pretty low. I recognize that. But a big jump. I will recognize that score may change one more time after a 3-player game, and then Ryan's
maybe expansion.
And well, that could lower it too. But
that could lower it. But
Ryan's went down a little bit, 0.6, and we are now only a 1.3 difference away. So we're that much closer to another game, Ryan. That's what it is.
I'm ready. Change my mind on Raiders of the North Sea next month. Good luck.
So next time you see one of these segments, we'll let everybody know. It's not booked yet, but we're going to do Raiders of the North Sea. I'm going to bring in, for the record, with that one, both expansions, and we're going to make it a better experience, I hope, for Ryan, and hopefully we just have a good time. I am going to try find a Viking hat to wear for that one, just to give my appropriate hat wear.
Yeah.
So Viking hat seems like what will be necessary. And hopefully
it's quite the change. 4.7 is my rating right now.
4.7. So there you go. We're going to find out if we can take Raiders of the North Sea from 4.7 to something a little more respectable. Don't worry, Shem, I'm on it.
Jeez.
I love my Shem games. We know that. Hopefully, you've had a good time and hearing what we've had to say about Caverna and that lesson about Agricola too. This has been Change My Mind, and thank you for coming aboard the Tabletop Express with Ryan and I this evening. We got some great content coming up. Please always take a look at that list of upcoming content. We've got some really good interviews coming up on Creators Corner that I do want to mention really quick. We got Julie Bearworth of Distant Rabbit Games coming on, and then we've got Randy Flynn, who is designer of Cascadia. Plus, we got a top 20 from Brian Chandler coming up, who is our resident king of accessibility here over at the Tabletop Express. So we're excited to see what games he has picked. And I'm sure we'll learn a little bit about how he might have made some of those games accessible along the way, which is always exciting to hear from Ryan. Not Ryan, Brian.
I'm sure he hates that too.
But on that note, I think it's fair to say, Ryan, thank you to everyone for coming aboard the Tabletop Express. We'll give a little toot toot and say, no toot toot.
All right, toot toot.
And have a great night, everybody.
All right.
We'll see you soon.